think the state does. 60% of our budget is healthcare, is education. Another 25% is healthcare. Their bill effectively means we get rid of everything in state government other than education and healthcare. Do you really think that's actually possible? If you do, I think you're fooling yourself. So this is an irresponsible tax cut. They know it. And we think we can do things that will actually target the investment. Businesses will invest if you reward them for investment. And we're going to go along with $250 million cuts in that area. Here's how mean-spirited they are. So we have a bill that couples with the federal government on tax policy. And the vast majority of that benefits businesses in the state of Iowa. And we think that's good. We think expensing things that normally would have to be depreciated will encourage more investment. And we think bonus depreciation on equipment and buildings, we think that makes sense. And that's to the tune of about $150 million in that bill. We think those things make sense. Here's how mean-spirited they are. We also think it makes sense.
Senator,
we also think it, I'm sorry, I've got the microphone and I have an opportunity to speak. And I do believe it is mean-spirited to say we can afford $150 million in tax cuts for corporations in this state that I support, and at the same time say to the working poor, we can't go to 10% on the earned income tax credit, from 7% of the federal earned income tax credit to 10%. That would cost $13 or $14 million. And it is mean-spirited to say $150 million for corporations in the state, but the poorest working families in the state, no break for them. Talk about shared sacrifice. Where is it?
Senator, you call us mean-spirited. I have to tell you, I'm doing this because I believe that Iowa is a place where we can go back to individual responsibility. This really illustrates the difference in the personal philosophy that I have and that the Senator has. Senator believes that government is the only answer to everything. More government. He wants to take more and more and more of your money away from you. Take more and more through property taxes. He is responsible. His party is responsible for raising $500 million in property taxes over the last 4 years. His party tried to get more income tax from you. They failed. Socialism, capitalism.
Mean-spirited and inaccurate. He's making reference to a bill we had on income taxes that cut taxes $50 million a couple years ago. Cut taxes $50 million. And I'm talking about giving back $150 million to businesses in the state of Iowa. And there's the philosophy on the other side. The working poor in this state. The people on the bottom rung of the economic ladder. We can afford it. We can afford $150 million for corporate tax breaks that I support. We can't afford 13 or 14 million for the poorest of the poor working families in this state. I'm not talking about people on welfare. I'm talking about working poor in this state. We can't afford a tax break for them. That's why I think it's mean-spirited.
We passed a 20% tax break for everybody, and that includes the working poor.
No, it doesn't. You are just plain factually wrong. Those are the folks, the poorest of the poor, they pay property tax on their homes or on their apartments as a part of their rent. They pay sales tax. They don't actually pay income tax in the state of Iowa. That's the whole point of the earned income tax credit. They are not subject. They don't get a nickel out of your tax cut bill.
See, and you know, the Senator is correct. This is actually negative income tax. This is a welfare program. It's not a tax program. It is a welfare program.
You know what it really is? It was Ronald Reagan's idea that rather than push up the minimum wage, it made more sense to do something in tax policy. So this used to be the Republicans' alternative to raising the minimum wage. They wanted an earned income tax credit. So Republicans weren't always mean-spirited. They said we'll do this instead of the minimum wage because we're worried about the job impact of minimum wage. Instead of that, we'll do earned income tax credit. Now they'll deny the working poor both.
Wait, I'd like to say one thing. Senator, I talked to some of the working poor as I was campaigning last fall and last summer, and I talked to other working folks in my district who said to me, I don't understand why when I have to sit around my kitchen table and try to balance my budget as my income is shrinking, why government doesn't have to do the same thing. Now, are we saying let's just balance it with no cost to anyone who is in need on any number of categories? No. But I think being fiscally responsible is not being mean-spirited. And you talked about getting a lot of things done if you could sit down together. Well, I think calling of names isn't exactly a conducive way to wanting to sit down and work civilly on an issue. I talked this week actually to a staff person in the state auditor's office. We were talking about the budget, and he said, you know, the steps that are being taken are good. He said, but I'm looking 5 years down the road, and he said, we may be back in the same situation if we're not careful, if we're not looking ahead and planning. And that's what every family has to do, is look ahead and plan. If you want to buy a new car, you look ahead and you plan. And you plan to buy a house, and you plan for major things. So, you know, I think our government needs to be as responsible as all of you are in working with your own family budgets.
We have hit our time of, as I said when we began,